Alrighty. Alrighty now. Let's get into lesson 3. Okay? Building each lesson should include representations of different aspects of the categories that you teach. So in this case, going through the sorcery stuff, because this is what my notes say, there was the herbal aspect, there was the stones aspect, there was the mathematical applications of it, there are the dimensional applications of it, where the energy originates, right? There's the celestial or the astrological calculation. So that gets really specific as to the types of personalities, the types of planetary engagements. Then there's the metamorphosis aspect. What is the metamorphosis and the transformations that have to occur within that structure? Okay? Then there's the elemental. What are the behaviors of that thing as it relates to what you're talking about? Then there's the divinatory. Those are the seeking questions, the looking for the ideal environments in which case those things get to take place. So what are the natural forms? So again, we go back to the herbal state. As it relates to the stones or the physical environment of the state, what is the energy origin of that thing that you're looking to teach? Where does that come from? Where did you learn it? You know, how is it going to be applied, and what are the times that it works out best? Then there's the liturgical. That's the conversation. What are the words that are required to get that narration into place? So what's your Genesis story going to be? Okay? And then what's the ascension? What's the personal development work behind what it is you're up to, so that as you go through what it is you have to teach, what you have to share, you've got the natural form of what it takes once it's done. What is the mathematics involved? What are the dimensional origins of those energies? What are the astrological behaviors? What are the spirits behind that? If you look for what is the motivation to learn that sort of thing, what are the assembly methods? Why do you need to use those ingredients in that way, in that format, right? And so as you go through each subject of study, tangible materials and different versions of the finished product, you can keep tinkering with it. You can keep going back to see, is this going to work in this situation? Is this not going to work in this situation? I'm going to try it with this type of client. I'm going to try it with this type of client. Which client benefits most with this structure? Who works best with this framework? Who's willing to listen and apply so that their lessons have different forms of engagement? Now, you don't have to function all of your lessons in a progression 1 to 3 to, like this. You can go back and forth to create different various layers of depth. So that way you have different patterns within your systems of operation that replicate these processes, so that way you have something that is really viable and really solid on which you can stand, that just allows you to create content on demand. So that when you structure it, you've got all the different elements already included in your lesson, so that what you're talking about naturally covers the form, the correspondence, the spirits, the development, the elemental behaviors when it relates to the natural world, when other people are experiencing it, when you've experienced it, when your clients have experienced it. These are the relationship patterns that you build out as you go through those sorts of things. And then as you get into the depth of each study, you have the tangible materials that are produced as a result. In this case, mastermind.com. In this case, Project Next Level, Project Next, the structure between the Mastermind World Summit. Like, all of those came out of a framework from a crazy idea that I had to bring the very best in industry together to talk about and collaborate, so that they become the best, so that they can elevate other people in their journey to become better, right? So that they can become teachers and teach other people how to do their thing really good, while I figured out and get taught back to all the different things and all the different structures of seeing it in action by people that are teaching their courses and teaching how to cover that gap. This is the really, really narrowed down specifics of where it originated from when you're looking at it from an occult perspective. What are the elements? What are the stones? What are the mathematics? What are the dimensions? What are the celestial behaviors? What are the alchemical assembly methods? What's the metamorphosis? If you can talk about these things and build them into your lesson plans, then you can naturally include these throughout each of the lessons that you build, so that way it becomes second nature and you don't have to worry about rigid frameworks. It just falls into alignment. So that as you break it down and as you break things into very specific, I'm going to go hard into the mathematics on this one thing, and then I'm going to go into the assembly method on this thing, and then I'm going to go into the as it relates to everything else in the ecosystem thing. And then it gets into the community projects, is then what are you going to be teaching? What are you going to be selling? What are you going to be learning? And how do those things cross-relate to each other? So that there's a durational period, a length, a time. How many months does it take? How many applications does it take? How many times do you have to go back over the material in order to be able to deliver the material in such a way that it becomes organic? So that way you know this stuff. These become rote conversations. What you record is a broken record conversation. So that you know exactly what people are talking about, exactly what people need to learn, so that as they go and learn it, they have the opportunity to apply their mentorship in a higher capacity, so that they can serve at a higher level. That way you get to be able to serve them at a higher level, and then the entire relationship gets to evolve beyond your bricks, beyond your widgets and wares, so that way you have a relationship that becomes longevity, right? So that way you have the inner relationship that allows you to go through each and every one of these things, right? And so as it applies, you then have the framework, you then have the pattern. So this is a short lesson, but it gets really, really into depth when you really go hard into what are the natural forms that it's going to take. How do those relate to the body of the work that you're creating? How does it correspond to other elements outside that ecosystem and as you bring them in? These are stories that you can tell. This is through the application of those stories, right? So again, you can get into a lot of depth here, and you can make it really intense, but it only has to start with a very simple conversation. So that's the end of this lesson, and I look forward to